well as the livelihood project on income and household well-being. We focused on piggery and poultry. We intend to have a 2 minutes brief or recap from the Director, Socio-Economic Monitoring, to fill in the Deputy Head of Public Service and the people here this morning of what took place and where we intend to be this morning. You give your name, what you do, and the agency you represent. We'll begin from that side.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Felix Olumeli. I work as a principal economist here in the Office of the President.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mrs. Joyce Seba, Principal Examinations Officer with the Uganda National Examinations Board. Mary Ntete Mutesi is my name, from the Ministry of Education and Sports, from the Secondary Education Department. I'm a Principal Education Officer.
I'm Dr. Kwete Jeka Justus, Dean Faculty of Science, Chambo University.
Dr. Henry Usura from Makerere University. I'm representing the Principal and the Dean School of Education.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Obina Santo. I work with GB Consulting Associates, part of the consultant who did this assessment. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Diarala Bonaventure. I work with the National Curriculum Development Center. I'm in charge of physics curriculum.
Ayeba Dejoan, Principal Economist, Office of the President.
I'm Ronald Dungu, Education Expert, Prime Minister's Delivery Unit, and the Teacher of Science.
My name is Ibrahim Peter Abuga, Principal Police Analyst, Office of the President.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm called Regasasa Hadija, Principal Assistant Secretary, Office of the President.
I do work with the National Council for Higher Education, the request for higher education office and kind of standards and equity qualification.
Sister Mary Grace Carol, Office of the President, and DC Secretariat and Corruption Section. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Fauzati Sumukobia, Policy Analyst, Office of the President.
My name is Mgunga Emmanuel Fredi, Under Secretary, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation.
Joe Lima, Under Secretary, Office of the President.
My name is Zamaka, I'm Policy of the President. Baron Tijole, Senior Personal Secretary, Office of the President.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean Richard. I'm a student at Mengo Senior School offering ECM.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Glorious, Director of Studies Office, Mengo Senior School.
Kamdera Fred, Office of the President, Manifesto Office.
Secretary of the President, Director of Socio-Economic Monitoring and Research, and the Secretary is present, and all senior officers. Madam, as you heard, our attendance spans from a spectrum of students, the learners themselves, right through the experts in these matters, science matters. Expected attendance was 45 persons. The last time we checked at our registration desk, were about 23 people. So that represents fairly 52%. We intend to begin, and that those who do not respect time will find us along the way. Now, distinguished participants, as soon as the Secretary and Deputy Head of the Secretary of the President and Deputy Head of Public Service finish their remarks, they may courteously stay with us. But if you do not see them, that means they have some other pressing assignments. So we'll continue whether with them or without them. If they stay, it's a courtesy, because already we intend that whether they are with us or without us, we will still brief them appropriately for the other pressing matters they must handle. So, within 120 seconds, Mr. Tumusini, kindly, 120 seconds, give a recap of what took place yesterday, then you'll do us a favor and invite the Secretary Office of the President to give his welcome remark. Thank you very much, sir.
The Deputy Head of Public Service and the Deputy Secretary of Cabinet, Secretary, Office of the President, officials from government ministries, colleagues in the Office of the President, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, we had two very intense sessions, and which were very interactive and lively, and I think they gave us a lot of learning lessons. One was on the independent ex-post evaluation of fisheries development project in Uganda, which was independently done by a consultant commissioned by Office of the President. That came up with a lot of recommendations and a lot of discussions. It passed with some recommendations to the consultant to go and pay attention to. So we did not conclude. The consultant was not clear. He was requested to go and seek more information to make sure that the report is fully informed, and also provide guidelines for the successive studies so that it could form some kind of a baseline for future studies. So we expect the consultant within 2 weeks to complete that study, and he brings it back. Then the one on independent research study on livestock value chain analysis, focusing on poultry and piggery for household income, passed with some adjustments, but I would say it passed 90% because it brought a lot of issues that possibly most of our interventions did not focus on along the value chain, and leading to most of the interventions failing along the way. But it's a very good policy guideline that will henceforth try to guide the interventions for household income in Uganda. So this morning, Madam Deputy Secretary and Secretary, Office of the President, we are going to look at the draft report presented by GB Consulting Associates on science. It is it's a process evaluation of the comparative science policy in Uganda. But I'm lively informed that the lead consultant missed his flight in Mogadishu yesterday, and he couldn't make it. But there is his colleague, the consultant, and also Mr. Mugerwa George, who has been supervising this study. I think they will guide us through the report. Most of us have gone through it already, but they will guide us through, and then we shall discuss and come up with the comments. So maybe as a concluding remark, we are doing these studies not to witch hunt people or maybe look for faults, but we are doing these studies to try and find out what is it that is not being done well, so that we can collectively contribute to it. And then after getting good recommendations, we escalate them to another level that would inform policy development, or maybe attract some kind of executive decisions on how best some of these systems can be streamlined. Because we have very good policies, we have very good reports have been written. We want to try and demonstrate that we can carry forward the recommendations and and ensure that those recommendations at least inform policy and also attract some sensitive decisions, which decisions would possibly try to improve service delivery and maybe address those lapses in the implementation chain. Basically, a director of ceremonies, that's I think the recap I can only give, but I have now the honor to invite the Secretary of the Office of the President to give his remarks.
The Deputy Head of Public Service and Deputy Secretary of Cabinet, the directors who are here, and the secretaries and commissioners, the comrades from academia, teachers and students, senior government officials who are here, the government partners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is, the director is not told, my name is Haji Kakande Yunus. I take this opportunity to welcome you to this validation workshop of a process evaluation report on the compulsory science education policy. Compulsory science policy in Uganda took effect in 2006, which made the study of science subjects, namely physics, chemistry, and biology, compulsory for lower secondary school students, in addition to the two subjects, that is mathematics and English language, that were already taught as compulsory subjects. The rationale behind this policy was to build capacity in the field of science in Uganda, ideally teaching students on how use of scientific method helps them to think, learn, and solve problems, and make informed decisions. These schools are integrated to every aspect of the student education and life right from the school career. The process of evaluation of the policy was conducted within an overall objective of assessing the processes involved in the implementation process and point out areas of weak implementation, if any. The specific objective for the evaluation also sought to ascertain were two: one, to establish the government readiness to implement this policy; two, to assess the implementation of architecture of the policy; three, to examine the effectiveness of the stakeholders in executing their roles and responsibilities for implementation of the policy; and four, to examine the preliminary immediate outcomes of the policy. Office of the President recognizes the importance of validating the findings of the process and evaluation by gathering views and comments from diverse stakeholders represented at this workshop. I'm glad to observe that key stakeholders represented include government, ministries, departments and agencies, local government, education institutions, civil society organizations, the private sector, the academia, development partners, and members of the general public. Some of you may be wondering why this evaluation was conducted by the Office of the President and not the Line Ministry. I need to mention that here that the Office of the President takes leadership in public policy management and the promotion of good governance practices. And other uninterested party is obliged to conduct independent studies to help inform policy development as and when it deems fit. It's our hope that this workshop will validate the findings of the evaluation to enrich the report. The report will further be used to provide evidence to the future studies make compulsory science a reality. Please feel free to express your ideas and view to help improve the study findings. Your input as stakeholders for perfecting this process evaluation report is highly appreciated. I now have the pleasure to invite the Deputy Head of Public Service and Deputy Secretary of Cabinet, Madam Deborah Katuram, make our opening remarks and officially open this workshop.
Good morning, everybody. The Secretary Office of the President, Directors, Commissioners, and Under Secretary present, Heads of Education Institutions, Consultants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to warmly welcome you to this workshop for validating the process evaluation report of the compulsory science education policy in Uganda. As has been said by the Secretary, the Office of the President is mandated to take leadership in public policy management and promotion of good policy governance. The Presidency, through Directorate of Social and Economic Monitoring Research, commissioned the process evaluation of this compulsory science policy in Uganda in financial year 2018-19. And the major purpose of today's workshop is to discuss and validate the findings of the study. As we are all aware, science is important in any country for many reasons, among which it transforms the lives of people from poor quality life and to better life through innovation, invention, and research. As we all know, education per se, whether it's science or humanities, is expected to produce intelligent people to manage their lives and become productive and therefore contributing to the economy. Countries that have become productive, countries that have put science at the forefront of their national agenda have had many people creating new technologies, new innovations, have greatly advanced in their economies, as you know, for example, China, Japan, US, among many others. Their focus is on knowledge of how things are, the way they are supposed to be, and what new areas can be brought on board to improve the livelihood of their people. Therefore, it is their greatest natural resource. The knowledge is their greatest natural resource, and they are consistently investing in science education. I was just thinking aloud one example here in Uganda of the mobile phone in this country and how it has revolutionized the lives of our people. I recall we were in our family at home and we had a game where each one of us were 10 in the family, and my sister was the facilitator and said, each one of you, give me one amazing science innovation that you think really has changed your life, or which you think is very, very important. And I recall my father saying the mobile phone. For me, I was saying going to the moon, and my other siblings were saying other things. So, but when I look at this example, which is in reality with us, and how you can transfer your money to somebody within no minute, how you can talk to somebody who is very, very far away, how you can transact business, how you can get ideas from others. I begin to appreciate this science. And therefore, the importance of compulsory science in schools cannot be overemphasized, since it is instrumental in the growth of logical and the judgmental capacity of children as they move at different stages of their lives. Actually, looking at this science education, it is about curiosity, especially for the children, curiosity around the children, within the children, and therefore teaching science can actually nurture the curiosity by understanding how something happens, why they happen, and how they work. I think that's how the science maybe look at science education. We need to reflect on how science works, whether you are a scientist or not, because it brings out so many questions, and therefore taxes our brain to think through on how we can improve our own lives and the lives of others. Because you know very well, through scientific education, you have scientific methods, and as we know, this is essentially about observations, hypotheses, experimentation, interpretation, reasoning, and really that is part of the process of learning, and therefore the need to embrace science education. The children's mental capacity is being prepared for systematic development, and especially for activity, because you have to think through what you have observed, you have to think through what are your assumptions, you have also to make out on the experimentation you have done, and also on the interpretation and reasoning. Often than not, we who are in humanities, sometimes we have problems with interpretation. And yet for the science, theirs is based on evidence. The example I can give is the statistical abstracts. How many of us are able to interpret them and use them maybe in our policy making processes? I think very few, except those people who prepare the statistician. But we need this science to help us, discover more about what is around us and what is within us. So the science education is basically preparing the children for systematic development and those special aptitudes. They are able to make objective judgment, and actually if you can think of any life situation, for privileged children, they normally have computer games which help them to develop their brains, to make decisions, and even aspiration to successfully play those games. Think of games like chess, think of games like draft, think of games like Scrabble. It is something that involves mental effort. Am I right? And therefore, in doing that, one is developing their mental capacity. But also, at the end of it, if the children are playing the games, there is some level of personal satisfaction. If you are in a competition, you're playing chess, Scrabble, whatever game you're playing, and there are 2 or 3, one wins, there is that personal gratification and say, yes, I'm better than you. So in that way, the other person who has not won is likely to want to know, how did you do it? How did you move in this game? So I found this science quite interesting. So government intention, as we know, is to build a critical mass of scientists that are expected to steer the country to the economic advancement through technology and innovation. I think some of you saw on MTV 2 young men, they developed what they called yoga security system. Did you see that? Yeah. By somebody called it Kigwacho. And they were trying to address a life problem, that is robbery in their homes. So they developed a security system to curb robbery. And in the explanation, they said the security system actually is connected to the police station. So when you have robbery coming in, you just press the alert, and then police will be informed, and then they can help you. And I think they were saying that they will develop it can work also with the GPS system. It can locate where that alarm is coming. And I thought that was quite innovative and very inspiring. And they said that it cost them, I think, 42 million shillings. So that type of innovation and thinking through our problems using science education is extremely commendable. Of course, you've seen other young men and women coming up with the different innovation, the Kira Moto, and many innovation at the universities, trying to address some of the common problems we have. So education, science education is not only for knowledge acquisition of the children, but it's also to help us solve some of our day-to-day problems. This workshop therefore provides an opportunity and platform for objective and critical review of the report findings, building consensus on good practices, lessons learned, and challenges that need to be addressed. And of course, you will need to come up with recommendations to fast track the realization of this science education policy objectives. The task ahead of you is critical to review the report and provide candid and genuine recommendations that can be implemented to improve the intervention or the pathways, the policy pathways. Really, personally, I read the report. I read the whole report. And at the back of my mind was saying, it's about 13 years since the policy started. Am I correct? I think you mentioned it started in 2006. So at this time, we would be assessing the impact, possibly. Maybe not the processes. Because the process, you want to be able to assess them so that you can make immediate interventions to address any challenges. Nevertheless, it will also, this report will provide the processes and the shortcomings that have been encountered. As the director said, it's not witch hunting, it's part of good governance, and we need to be very honest with ourselves in terms of the policies we make and the implementation. Because through such a thing, you are able to identify the problem, and maybe you can rethink on the policy, you can review it and come back to cabinet and say, no, I think we can now move this way in view of these changing circumstances, which is normally acceptable with cabinet. I have told my colleagues, the policy analysts, several times, cabinet papers are coming in the cabinet, but they are not able to define the problem. And because the problem is not defined, the interventions that are proposed normally are not implemented. So through such a process, evaluation, we may be able maybe to improve on our policy management. On behalf of the Office of the President, I wish to thank you all for honoring this invitation and to come here and discuss this report. I would like, however, to remind you that to be mindful of how we can utilize this recommendation of this study to improve the policy intervention or even to do a policy shift if it is extremely therefore. I therefore have the pleasure to declare this workshop open and to thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Madam Deborah Brown, the Deputy Head of Public Service in the Deputy Secretary Cabinet. Friends, certainly without the risk of paraphrasing what Madam said, science is life, science is us, and that is why we are here this morning. Now, we'll do something very small and revisit the timetable, the program for this activity. We're going to take a group photo, which will be taken behind there. Then, after the group photo, Freedom, where are you? Where are you, Freedom? You should be at your job. So, after that, we'll lead the Deputy Head of Public Service, as well as Haji Kakande, who is the Secretary of the President, to the tea table. Then, like I said, they may graciously stay with us after that. But if they are unable to, please bear with them. Let's stay at this discussion. Madam has read the report. You heard it yourself. So, Freedom, do the needful, lead us to the group photo. And then after that, we'll go for the cup of tea, and then come back for the presentation, and then drive all through to lunch, the discussions, the questions, way forward between after break and 1 p.m. Thank you very much, Madam Patron. Thank you very much,
Presentation, we shall have a discussion and identification of key actions. After that, we shall have a wrap-up and way forward by the director, and we shall have the closing remarks. So that's what I am supposed to make sure we accomplish within now and 1 o'clock. So I'm going to, according to the timing, we're supposed to have 50 minutes of presentation, and I think we shall stick to that, 50 minutes, and then go for the discussions. Now, the person who is going to make the presentation started his career with the Bachelor's of Arts in Economics. He got a Master's in Arts in Economics, and also has an MBA in Financial Management. He has 18 years of experience in both public and private sector management, including the academia. And right now he's the Commissioner for Monitoring and Evaluation in the Office of the President, taking on the MD position for the Uganda Security Printing Company Limited, which is still under Office of the President. The person is none other than Mr. Mugerwa George. Let me put our hands together and welcome him to make his presentation. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Director, Commissioners, Heads of Departments, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to make a presentation regarding the process evaluation of the science, the compulsory science policy. As Mr. Chairman has introduced, my name is Mugeba George, and I'm working here as a Commissioner for Monitoring and Evaluation in the Office of the President. But also taking on the new assignment of the MD for Uganda Security Printing Company Limited, which is still under the Office of the President. In terms of the presentation outline, we have the background, the basis for the process evaluation. We'll look at the methodology for the process evaluation and the evaluation findings. We'll go into the policy implementation challenges, conclusions and recommendations, and then finally, we'll try to come up with a discussion. We'll go into discussion and then come up with the action points, which we need to integrate in order to finalize the process. Yeah, this is just a background of the study, where we are looking at the efforts that the government of Uganda has been taking in terms of realizing the development agenda. We are seeing that these efforts are actually being limited or affected by the limited number of scientists that we have. We also look at the different discussions or literature that has been provided by the different writers regarding the importance of science and technology in enhancing development. You realize that since independence, we've been actually producing on the humanities, or what we would call the white-collar job workers, which has actually limited, which has created the shortage of the scientists that we need to prosper or to propel the development process. If you look at the last bullet, it's looking at Ramthan, who is trying to emphasize the importance of science and technology in ensuring food production, but also in ensuring sustainable development. So all in all, we are aware that if we are to realize any development agenda, science and technology is very critical for the realization of this agenda. Now, based on what we've just said, you realize that government of Uganda adopted the compulsory science policy in 2006, having realized the kind of context or kind of environment which was existing by then. One of the things that you'll note from this policy is that it made physics, chemistry, and biology to be compulsory to what we would call the ordinary level. For some of you who might have done your O-level before the 1990s, you will agree with me that during that time, it was optional for one to do physics, to do chemistry, to do biology. The only compulsory subjects which we used to have were basically English and mathematics. However, the introduction of the new policy, it made these three subjects to be compulsory. The purpose of this policy, as you see, it was basically intended to ensure that there is a critical mass of scientists who would prosper the development aspects of the country. Now, having mentioned that this policy came on board in 2006, when you try to look at the time frame, we're almost coming to 13 years. And the different stakeholders are now taking interest in, first of all, understanding what kind of processes has this policy gone through during its implementation. What could be some of the challenges that could have been faced in its implementation, and then the kind of immediate outcomes that we can probably see. So this report is basically trying to provide a rapid assessment of the process evaluation of the implementation of the compulsory science policy. You also realize that the outcome or the output of this evaluation is meant to feed into the detailed study, which should be in position to look into how this policy has actually fared. Again, if you make a reflection on the policy, you will see that there are some 4 critical points which we need to pick from it. One of them is that these 3 subjects were made compulsory, as I've mentioned. physics, chemistry, biology. That is in addition to the mathematics and English, which we already compulsory. The second issue which we also picked from this policy is the provision of close to 75% financial support to all those students who are joining tertiary institutions, especially if they were going to pursue science-based courses. And then we also look at the recruitment and training of more than 1,000 teachers, specifically science teachers, as one of the ways through which the policy could be implemented. But again here, we may need to ask ourselves, how realistic was this number? Was it really adequate if we are looking at rolling out the policy across the entire country? Would the 1,000 teachers be enough to implement this policy? Those are some of the things which we need to look at. And then finally, we look at the equipment, equipping teachers, training colleges, secondary schools, with the laboratory services, with the laboratory infrastructure, with equipment. We cannot talk about implementation of a science policy without having work on the laboratory infrastructure in the institutions where students are supposed to be trained from. What was the basis for this evaluation process? Of course, we are basing on a combination of facts, values, principles, and qualities which should be in position to help us measure the kind of success that any given intervention is making. And in this case, we are basically looking at the compulsory science policy. So in assessing this policy, you realize that we did it in line with the national policy on public sector monitoring and evaluation, which was made in 2013. And if you try to look at this policy, you realize that it clearly gives the kind of framework that one needs to adopt if you are looking at coverage, if you are looking at quality, if you are trying to look at utility of the assessment of any of the given government interventions. So you also take note that this compulsory science policy is also being empowered by the President's remarks, where emphasis is basically on science education as one of the ways through which we can realize the national development. So in terms of the purpose of the evaluation, you will note that the purpose of this evaluation is basically to assess the process which has been involved in the implementation of this policy. It is a process evaluation. It's not an outcome evaluation, it's not an impact evaluation. It is a process evaluation. And as I've mentioned, the outcomes of this evaluation should be in position to inform, to trigger off a further detailed study, which should be in position to give the highlights of how this policy has failed. So specifically, the policy, the evaluation was looking at establishing the government's readiness. Before we took on this policy in 2006, you recall that the declaration was made in 2005, and its implementation was started on in 2006. So before we implemented this policy, how ready were we? Readiness in terms of planning, in terms of implementation, in terms of management, in terms of ensuring that the wider stakeholder group is actually aware of its roles and responsibilities in the implementation of this policy. The second one is basically to assess the implementation architecture of the policy. We want to see what kind of framework was put in place, in order to facilitate the smooth implementation of this policy. The third one is on examining the effectiveness of the key stakeholders in executing their roles and responsibilities for this given policy. We are aware that as this being a national policy, there are a number of players who are expected to play their respective roles and responsibilities in ensuring that the policy objectives are realized. So the question is, to what extent do these players fulfill their roles? in the implementation of this policy. And then lastly is basically to look at some of the preliminary outcomes, immediate outcomes, if any, which we can say that, okay, here are some of the outcomes, the immediate outcomes of the implementation of this policy. So basically, those were the 4 specific objectives for the execution of this evaluation. In terms of the scope, yes, we are saying that the scope is only limited to the processes. It's only limited to the processes. And then we also realized that in the process of doing this, we also had to make some kind of reflection on the DARC criteria or the OECD criteria for carrying out evaluations. One of them being relevancy. Was really this policy relevant to the Ugandans? At what point in time do we determine relevance of any given intervention? Was the policy effective? One would be interested in knowing the effectiveness of this policy. And of course, for you to be in position to tell how effective this policy was, we need to go back to what was it intended to realize. That's when we'll be in position to tell whether this policy was really effective or not. Efficiency, the cost of doing business. At what cost is it being implemented? Impact, could there be some long-term outcomes of this policy as a result of the implementation of this policy? Are we in position to see some long-term outcomes? But probably those are some of the things which we need to tease out when we do a detailed study. Then there's also the issue of the sustainability. This being a national policy, one would be interested in knowing how sustainable is it? Financially, technically, managerially, how is it, how feasible is it? How can we be in position to sustain this? Do we have the adequate resources? Are we having the right infrastructure in terms of the software and the hardware which can enable this policy to succeed? And then we have, basing on that, we are in position to develop the evaluation questions, which we are later on put into the data collection instruments, which we administered to the right respondents, and data was collected. Different stakeholders were involved in the evaluation process, those from the implementation perspective, but also those ones from the consumption point of view, in order to get the right feel of how the policy was actually being implemented. We are also seeing the application of the mixed methods in terms of the qualitative, but also the quantitative. Qualitative by having key informant interviews with those experts whom we thought that they would provide the right information regarding the implementation of this policy. Quantitative by making some kind of extracts from the secondary data which we have, especially in terms of the performance, the students' performance, as we'll see in the next slides. So we applied those semi-structured questionnaires, key informants, and we also made attempts to ensure that we observe the hardware which was in place. In this case, when we talk about the hardware, we are basically looking at the laboratory infrastructure. Do we have some laboratory infrastructures which are really functional? Because it's also one thing to have the infrastructure in place, and it's another thing for that infrastructure to be functional. In terms of the sampling, it was purposive, as we've already seen, and in this case, we had to make sure that we get respondents from the Ministry of Education headquarters. We had to contact the National Council for Science and Technology. I hope education is represented here, Ministry of Education, National Council for Science and Technology.
Ministry is represented.
The ministry is represented. National Curriculum Development Center. Then the secondary schools. So you realize that people from various institutions were contacted in order to ensure that they participate in this exercise. Those are some of the respondents that we have. If you click on the hyperlink, you'll be in position to see the whole list of the members who were contacted during this evaluation process. In terms of the ethical considerations, of course, securing the letters of introduction from the Office of the President, and at this note, I'd like to thank the Office of the President for having facilitated this process. We also sought the administrative approvals from the relevant institutions, education, the schools which we have visited, and then the training institutions. Consent was also secured from the respondents, and then they were assured of confidentiality. In terms of control, we realized that staff, the entire staff of the directorate, had to participate in the development of the instruments. And then triangulation was also another method which was used in order to ensure that we validate, we corroborate the kind of data that we have. So in terms of the findings, our findings are listed according to the evaluation objective. And the first objective was on establishing the readiness of the government to implement this policy. Now, in terms of readiness, we tried to look at what is appearing at the macro level, at the global level. And one of the things which we saw was that Uganda is already a member of UN. So it subscribes to the SDGs. And when you go into the details, you realize that goal number 4 is basically looking at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education. So in terms of being ready, for the government being ready to take on this policy, we could see that, yes, the mere fact that they were subscribing to the global development agenda, then the government was really willing and ready to take on this policy. The next one is basically at the national level, where we are looking at the NDP 2. When you try to look at NDP 2, you realize that our aspiration is basically to realize a middle income status by 2020. And this is going to be done, this is going to be realized through the pursuance of these 4 strategic objectives: increasing sustainable production, productivity, and value addition in growth opportunities. It is something which has to do with science. So there is no way we can realize that without embracing science. The second one, which is increasing the stock and quality of strategic infrastructure to accelerate the country's competitiveness, again, it has something to do with science. If you look at enhancing human capital development, that one, it has no question mark. It's given. There's no way we can enhance capital development, human capital development, without embracing science and technology. And then lastly, strengthening the mechanism for quality, effective, and efficient service delivery. There is no way we can improve on service delivery without having embraced science and technology. Then we go into the sector aspects. Education as a sector. How ready was it? First of all, we are looking at the Ministry of Education itself, its mandate. It has the mandate. And one of the aspects which are included in the mandate is basically ensuring the delivery of relevant and quality education. So, by bringing on board the compulsory science on policy, it is something which was already feeding into the mandate of the ministry. Then enhancing the integration of science and technology into the national development policy. So, in this case, one would say that probably science and technology is now becoming a cross-cutting issue within the development the development process. We go statutory-wise to look at some of the institutions that have been put in place in order to support the efforts of this policy. One of them is the National Council for Science and Technology. We also have some other institutions like which have come up with policies, other development policies which have been developed specifically to ensure promotion and development of science and technology, like the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy of 2009. We also have the National ICT Policy of 2014. So all these ones are basically trying to provide room to prepare the government to ensure that they really take on the science policy. With regard to the implementation architecture, assessing the implementation architecture. What is it that was put in place? Or what is it that is being put in place to ensure that this policy is effectively implemented? These are some of the findings. You realize that we have a number of MDAs that have been put in place, specifically to boost or to promote science and technology. In this case, if you look at the National Council for Science and Technology, you look at NITAU, you look at Uganda Communication, there are a number. So all those MDAs are basically supposed to work together to ensure that science and technology is really embraced. We're also seeing the rehabilitation and the expansion of science, technology, and innovation learning facilities in these training institutions. Makerere University, if you look at the computer school, if you look at medical school, almost all the colleges within the university, you realize that they've been worked on in order to ensure that they promote science and technology. Of the SESEMAT, now that is at the sector level, as one of the avenues. SESEMAT, how do we ensure that we promote, we really enforce, not even enforcing, but we promote science and mathematics in terms of the teaching in the institutions? We can see that we have the SESEMAT, which is basically being supported by, I think, JICA. We realize that there is also the development of the lower secondary curriculum. We are seeing equipping science laboratories at secondary schools, as we will see. But again, take note that, yes, it was one thing to say laboratories have been constructed, and it's another thing for those laboratories to be functional. There are some places where you would go and you find that, okay, in terms of the infrastructure is there, the building is there. But then when it comes to the consumables are not there. So how would you expect such a laboratory to work? We also look at the salary enhancement for the science teachers, and of course we will see the repercussions of that. We might look at it as something which is positive, but then on the other hand, you realize that it also has its own side effects. We are seeing the students' loan scheme as one of the architectures for the implementation of the policy, where students who qualify for science-based courses in the government and some few private institutions are basically supported financially to ensure that they take on their courses. The development of the national teachers policy, and then the Uganda Secondary Education Expansion Project. So one can say that these are some of the architectural frameworks which we have in place, which are geared towards ensuring that the science policy, the compulsory science policy, is actually implemented. Now, in terms of the stakeholders, we are in position to identify some of these stakeholders. I'm sure from this group we would get advice to see which other stakeholder we might have left out. And then we could also look at to what extent have they really fulfilled their roles and expectations. Of course, we have Minister of Education and Sports as one of the key stakeholders. And in this case, we are looking at education as the supplier of the inputs, but at the same time, it's also a consumer of some of the products which are being generated by this policy. So in this case, we look at the ministry as the implementer. They are the implementers of this policy. The question would be, what kind of framework, implementation architecture do they have? What kind of resources do they have? What kind of mechanism systems have they put in place in order to ensure that this policy is effectively implemented? Ministry of Public Service, with regard to the recruitment of teachers. As you will see, one of the challenges of the policy in the next slides when we go there, you'll see that one of the challenges that we have is basically shortage of science teachers. So how has Ministry of Public Service played its role with regard to the recruitment process for the teachers? And of course, I think in this case, when we talk about Ministry of Public Service, we also have to relate it to the Education Service Education Service Commission. We have Ministry of Finance specifically for the allocation of the resources. Sometimes we could sympathize with the Ministry of Public Service if they not be in position to get the financial resources. Then how should we expect them to carry out the recruitment process? Parliament, in terms of approving the allocations, how far have they gone? What kind of emphasis have they put in place to ensure that at least the education sector gets the right resources, adequate resources to ensure that they implement this policy? Because we've already seen the importance of this policy. We have Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, which is new. We'd also love to know how has it fared with regard to the implementation of the compulsory science, ICT and national guidance. We have the development partners. You realize that there is a platform which brings together development partners in the area of education. How have they supported the implementation of this, this policy? The school management, this is where finally the actual implementation is taking place. What are their roles and responsibilities, and how have they been in position to execute them? The parents. Of course, in this case, we can't forget that one of the stakeholders in the implementation of this policy are the parents. Have they played their respective roles in terms of supporting the students with the materials which they need to have in order to learn the science subjects? The learners themselves, it's good that we have one of our students here, probably who will share with us his experience regarding how his colleagues are endeavoring to ensure that really they take on the science subjects. Some of the students could be looking at science as a burden. And then we have the general public. To what extent has the general public really tried to promote this policy? We've seen in some situations where people are just saying, no, science is to hell. The return on investment, if you compare the return on investment, if you do sciences vis-a-vis arts, that there are higher returns on investment from arts courses, especially in this era where we are seeing the musicians, the comedians getting a lot of money. So they are saying instead of going to do a science-based course, probably if I go into my MDD, which we used to despise, I might be better off. So those are some of the stakeholders that we are able to map out. And the question which is still not yet answered well is the extent to which these stakeholders have been in position to play their respective roles. You also realize that one of the challenges which we had in this policy is that there is no clear stakeholder mapping as far as this policy is concerned. So sometimes if you ask, if we take an example of finance, and you ask that probably before this policy was adopted, did the finance provide a certificate of financial implication to see what would be the financial implications of implementing this this policy? Probably the answer could be yes, it could be no, or it could be in between there. So the last one is looking at examining some of the preliminary immediate outcomes with regard to this policy. So here you realize that some of the issues which are, some of the outcomes which are being represented here, they were also appearing in the architecture which was put in place to implement this policy. So one of them is basically the pronouncement of the policy itself in 2005, and you can see on the extreme corner, you have the outcomes which we are envisaged to be realized. We have the establishment of the SESEMAT, and we can also see the outcomes which we are envisaged. Continue. The issue of circulars, Amos could help us here. How are the circulars really working? Basically to ensure that the respective institutions, education institutions, they implement the policy. We have the introduction of the USE under the Uganda Post-Primary and Education Training. We also have the expected outcomes. Okay, continue. The development of the lower secondary curriculum. We have the equipping science laboratories at secondary schools as another intervention which we can look at as an outcome of the implementation of the policy. Continue. Salary enhancement, then the students' loan scheme through the Higher Education Students Financing Board. Continue. Restructuring of teachers' training colleges, and then the development of the national teacher policy. So these are some of the immediate outcomes which we are in position to say, yes, these are some of the things that we can say they could be a result of the implementation of the of the compulsory science policy. What we have here is basically an illustration or reflection of what has happened with regard to the construction of the laboratories. That is from 2009 up to the financial year 2018-2019. You realize that the blue ones are for the central, the orange is for northern, the grayish one is western, and then the yellow one is for eastern. So just by taking a quick scan of what is illustrated there, you can see that in 2009, a total of 338 laboratories were constructed. When it comes to 2015-16, we are seeing 3 laboratories, but we are implementing the policy. One could ask, could it be that maybe all schools have been served? That's why we have only 3. 16-17, we are seeing 32. 17-18, we are seeing 14. 18-19, we are seeing 2. And in total, you can see that Central Region has so far had 81 laboratories. Northern is having 67. Western is having 140. And the Eastern is having 101, giving a total of 389 laboratories. Now again, we need to ask ourselves, this being a national policy, are these laboratories really adequate to ensure, to guarantee the implementation of this policy? That is a question that can be answered by the members. We also have some of the laboratories which we visited, some of the schools which we visited. Kabira Maido, SS, you can see their science block. We have St. John Bosco, Dokoro. So you can see this is something which looks to have been abandoned, more or less abandoned. Then we have Kayunga, Busana, and then this is also part of Kayunga. So at least here you could see there is some bit of activity taking place. In terms of the loan scheme, as we are all aware, government introduced the loan scheme in 2012, specifically to ensure that they support those students who are joining tertiary institutions to pursue the science-based courses. So we have a figure here in terms of applicants versus those ones who were successful. So you realize that in 2014-15, we had this number, 2,125, but it's only 1,201, which is 56% of the applicants were successful. In 15-16, we are seeing only 28% succeeding in securing the loans. When it comes to 16-17, we have 35. 17-18, we have 34. And then the average, which you could call a total, is basically 36%. So the question is, what happens to the 64%? The doctor who studied for 8 years. We also have the existence of the counterfeit laboratory consumables. This is something which is well known. We all know that on the market, these are some of the challenges that we have. Continue. The issue of rural areas, that is a challenge which we already know. Lack of clear policy framework to guide the implementation. As I mentioned, if you ask members that where is the policy document for the compulsory science, at most you might be lucky to see a 2-page document.
Mr. Presenter, you have 10 minutes now to conclude.
I'm almost coming to the conclusion. Then we have the high cost of teaching science subjects due to the cost of the equipment, the challenges of electricity. The rural-based schools have no access to power, and this also affects their ability to embrace the absence of the baseline to inform the development of the policy, and then starting compulsory science at all level instead of primary level, which made some basic gaps in the basics of foundation. So this is what we have with regard to some of the laboratories. This is Chitovu, this is Indeba, I think this was Indeba, and then this. Continue. So in conclusion, the implementation without this policy document, it makes the work to be very difficult. We're also seeing that CPDs would be one of the ways through which really we need to promote the capacity, to boost the capacity of the science teachers to do their work. Selective enhancement of salaries, of course, this one is already having some kind of negative effects on the rest of the teachers. The construction of the laboratories, it has to be looked at from a holistic perspective, not only limited to the infrastructure. We need to look at the consumables, the personnel, the reagents that are needed to make this laboratory to be functional. Next. Limited consultative processes, especially when it comes to the curriculum reviews. It's very critical, and the adoption of the SESAMAT has also some issues when it comes to the completion of the syllabus. We have the 3 critical players. We have UNEB, we have National Curriculum Development Center, and then we have also the SESAMAT. How can they create a synergy to ensure that they realize the objectives? Continue. So in terms of the recommendations, these are the draft recommendations which we have, rationalizing the enhancement of teachers. We're also looking at consolidation of the policy document. The recruitment itself, we need to think about it in terms of the teachers, but also the lab personnel. The posting guidelines to be very clear. Future curriculum reviews to ensure that they are done in a participatory manner. Enforcing the regulatory impact assessment, especially when it comes to the development of public policies, in order to be sure of the effects of the policy of the different stakeholders. Exploring school-based recruitment and retention strategy. The key issue here is retention strategy. You wouldn't love to see a situation where someone has been recruited, but barely 3 months down the road, that person is again lodging in his or her resignation. Continue. In terms of acknowledgement, we acknowledge the following institutions. The list is not really exhaustive. We have other members who have participated in this. Ministry of Education as the lead, the district local governments, Kayunga Masaka, Abim, Maido. We have UNEP, have the head teachers in the institutions of the schools which we are visited, National Curriculum Development Center, Council of Science and Technology, and then the Education Students Financing Board. Mr. Chairman, members, and
thank you very much, Mr. Presenter. I think we've not given him enough hand clap. That is better. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have got the presentation. He has taken us through a number of issues, including the background, the basis for the process evaluation, the objectives, the scope, the methodology, and the findings by objective, and then concluded and made the recommendations. So now it's time for us to make our inputs into this process, and we see if what has been presented is what we think is the right one, or there are issues that we need to raise. And I think we shall, now that you mentioned that there is one of your colleagues here called Amos, maybe we shall request him to come up so that he can help you in answering some of the questions. Yes, so Amos, can you please come over so that you can help him when they fire questions which he may not be able to answer appropriately. So can we now take some questions? We shall take maybe 5. Answer them, and then we shall take another set.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the presenter for such a nice presentation of the findings. I have 2 questions, Mr. Chairman. One concerns what sustainable strategies were put into consideration. I wouldn't say when this policy was developed, because the presenter has already told us there is nothing in place. But what sustainable strategies can be thought about? Number 2 is that when the presenter was giving us a focus of where the policy is supposed to be implemented, he did not talk about colleges that offer certificates and diplomas in some of these science-related skilling. And that's a very big gap in this country, where we are lacking practitioners, painters, mechanics, that kind of cadre of, in a way, scientists. Thank you very much.
Yes, the second person, this gentleman, yes. Please, can you tell us your name, the institution, then you put your question.
Thank you, Chair. Cyrus Rasoskin from the National Council for Higher Education. I just forwarded 2 points here, not really in forms of question, but possibly as a few recommendations. One is that whereas all professional bodies have regulatory bodies that govern the professions, the teachers do not. And that affects the way the teachers are doing their work. Right now, when a teacher, we talked about CPDs. When a teacher is given that certificate of registration as a teacher, that is it. Now, the profession like the law, you have every a year or 2 to renew that license so that people watch that one is lacking. And I think it's a big stumbling block to implementation of a number of policies, including this one too. I'm much aware that a number of teachers in the schools there have qualifications which are not there. They hold papers and those papers are fake. And I know several districts. So I think we need a national strategy of verifying the qualifications of all the teachers. Of course, this should go on the whole public service. But beginning with this, the teachers, so that we get to know that we have the right people in schools. Otherwise, we have people who are there, but they're not qualified to be there. So,
yes, this lady here, the one in front of you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for the wonderful presentation. I am Fauza Kisumugo, your Policy Analyst, Office of the President. I would like to also add on to what the first discussant stated. In addition to presenting the higher institutes of learning, the universities, we need to project the contribution made by the BTVET institutes. These are the vocational institutes, the business institutes, and they are the ones taking in all the students who are not scoring the higher grades, and all the students who cannot afford the university education. Then I would also like to thank you so much for emphasizing the relevance of RIA. That's the Regulatory Impact Assessment. And as of now, before we accept any policies that are submitted to Cabinet, it is a requirement that they have to present a RIA first to show how they've picked up this option of selecting the policy. Otherwise, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Mbumba Emmanuel, the first Under-Secretary of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. As it was mentioned by one of the presenters, it is the youngest ministry in Uganda, which came into place in 2016 June, with only the minister and the PS later appointed in November, and the rest of the staff joining it. So maybe this is where perhaps only the National Council for Science and Technology was consulted, and perhaps the ministry wasn't consulted, because when you are dealing with issues of policy, the focus should be the ministry and not the agency. But well, I do admit that prior to that, it is of course the National Council of Science and Technology which was the key player in this, and you will observe that this country has not been very serious in as far as issues of science, technology and innovation. Ask me why. That council for a long time was under Minister of Finance. And I was at Minister of Finance, and when I was there, whenever an issue of science, technology and innovation came up, their interest was macroeconomic stability, issues of inflation, issues of revenues, issues of expanding the resource envelope. So they were never what? They were never discussed. So it's high time, and I'm glad that we are really focusing on this. Looking at, also now going to what you also presented, mine could be comments, but there could be questions here and there. There's what you mentioned, that the policy, actually I've never seen this policy. Me, I thought it was just a pronouncement. No wonder we are saying that it is, without a policy document, we are unable to do what? To look at the policy. For me, this comes from government working in a disjointed manner. We tend to work in a disjointed way. And I'm going again to explain to you why. But let me start with the issue of where you said humanities versus sciences. I can comfortably tell you that even where we have prioritized sciences and tried to raise the profile, the issue of inputs, which again you mentioned, many of these schools could have the laboratories, but again there was no equipment. Even where there was the equipment, to get the reagents or the chemicals and whatever to use was always what? Was always a problem. I think not so long ago, I don't know whether it is UNEP or where the chemicals that were supplied were different from what actually was supposed to give these students the necessary results when they were doing the practicals. So disjointed handling, or maybe also not having adequate practice with this what they are made. I remember when I was in my O-levels, at least we had a laboratory, we had a laboratory assistant, and there was time when you could go in and practice. Many of our students are getting these at the time of doing what? Of doing exams in the third term, when that's when they are really trying to practice on these things. I do not know how we expect to achieve this very good science when this is what we are doing. Now, even when we are saying we are focusing on sciences, what exactly are we doing? You realize, of course, we are looking at all of them, but I'm trying to see as a country how we have not done it in a wholesale manner. For a long time, even in this computer school of computing or whatever which we keep praising, can one explain to me why one should start specializing in the first year? That this one is doing what? Computer this. The other one is doing it. Instead of doing the whole thing initially, then you specialize at a later date. I mean, when you have advanced in the subject that you are dealing with. Many of you will recall that in Uganda, when people talked of learning computer, they were actually learning switching it on and off, doing the word process, and that's what they're not talking of coding, they're not talking of programming, they're not talking of the actual things that people should be doing. And we have looked on and left these issues to continue, and what they produce cannot enter the market. No wonder you find somebody who says, I've done civil engineering and is coming to ask for an office job to sit somewhere in an office, and they're not actually doing the work they're supposed to do. Also talk about the issue of when we consider when we start, and I'm glad you pointed out that instead of starting with primary, we started with what? With secondary. What are we building? At the means of science, technology, and innovation, what we have found the biggest challenge now is that you don't start science from the universities. You start science from primary. That is what countries are doing, and they are putting good money, big money in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They are putting their money right from early. They are identifying the pupils at that stage. In countries that are doing best in issues of STEM, actually you realize that for them, the best who have done very well in science, they do not go for medicine or pharmacy or what. They go for what for us here, what we call BSc flat. Because they are the ones who are going to do research. They are the ones who are going to do research. Here, the one who goes for BSc flat is the one who has not made it to medicine, to pharmacy, and has not made it to medicine, or has not made it to the human and then veterinary medicine. We have also lost the focus there. No wonder we are not having people who are coming out with cutting-edge researches. Almost finally, the disjointed approach, which I also want to mention here, is this. We've got the vocational institutes, they are there. I would like to give you an example of where there was a vocational institute in Bujiri, and they had the automotive mechanics or whatever they call, something related to that. And what did they have? There was only one car in that one, in that technical college, which belonged or was being used by the principal. And what would they do? It would be only available maybe once or twice a week. And what would they do? It drives it there, they open the bonnet, look at the engine, and then look at a few parts there, and that is it. These policies, why can't we join them? The developed world where people are doing things well, okay, let's look here. I'm told in the School of Medicine, of course you know I'm not a doctor, but when you join in the first year, they give you your cadaver, your corpse, which you start working with from day one until you leave that place to go for an internship. Meaning, each day they are saying, cut here, cut this, you have yours you are working with. Here, you don't have an engine, you don't have these vehicle parts. And what are we doing in the government? Always disposing of vehicles. Disposing of at 200,000, 300, 1 million. Why can't we have policies that are joined so that instead of disposing these off, we give them to the technical colleges? They use these vehicles to train people who are training on what? On the mechanics. Finally, I would like to appeal to you that we need now also, when we are considering this, that we would love to see the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy working hand in hand with this. And indeed, as she said, that RIA is now very what? Is important. And maybe because this one was not taken through the rigors. In Uganda today, we have always seen the actual writing of policies running after the pronouncements. This was the case with UPE, you know, which was the it became later. We do not think through. I'm glad we now have RIA. If we were to work on this, we would have found that if we had simply used the STI policy, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, which was developed in 2009, and maybe worked within that, we then find that it is an all-encompassing. And then this would provide roles and responsibilities of each one, of institution and guiding this. I can talk forever, but thank you very much for this. I hope we get an opportunity to interact further with the consultants on this as Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. We may have additional input in this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I deliberately gave you more time because I know you have a lot of information on science, technology and innovation.
Yes, Chair. I will just respond to a question regarding the other institutions which are also providing training services at certificate and probably diploma level. Last year we did a similar study, and I will tell you that the challenges are more or less the same. When it comes to issues of the inputs, which US has just talked about. In one of the institutions, we realized that they were offering mechanical courses. But the vehicle which was being used for practicals had been grounded for the last 8 years. And the students would be asked to come and do their practicals from that vehicle. So instructors would say, when you put the key here, you do key, yeah, it will do. So you've done the practicals. In one of the interactions which we had with someone again from BTVET, they even reached a point where they said, okay, within the nursing course, we are wondering, for us in the past, whenever it would come to practicals, would be demonstrated how to do the real injection. Of late, we are seeing the tomatoes are being substituted for. So you find a young girl who is doing nursing, so if she's being trained how to inject, they bring an injection and a tomato, so they demonstrate. This is how you, at the end of the day, what do you expect this person to go away with, if this is the kind of exposure that has been given to this person? So those are some of the challenges, as you mentioned, that as a government, we need to come up and see how do we really address them. We cannot expect it to boost science and technology without having had a significant input into the sector. Thank you.
Yes, I think your colleague can, if he has something to add, you can add them, and then you can talk to the director will take over from here to also add a few things before we get the next set of questions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Maybe briefly on the last person who presented, I think that's Emmanuel. You talked a lot, and that is majorly what we saw. And personally, I went to the field. And some of the things I found was slightly a little bit, to use a better word, disturbing. You discover that in a school, students are taken through practicals 1 or 2 weeks to exams. And then the kind of practicals that you go through are simply meant for you to sit exams. That was a little bit disturbing. Another thing also which I found is that because of lack of framework, it became extremely difficult for the Ministry of Education to implement this policy. So efforts were being made. You pitch this document from this program, you take the other one, you bring this, and eventually the policy became like an elephant which cannot be described. So those were some of the things we found. But also, I'd like to say that as the nation, we try to look at what other countries, especially in Africa, who are our neighbors, have done to foster development. Two key countries that we found out, Kenya, our immediate neighbor, they have done deliberate policy implementation, science policy, and it has taken them far. Another country is Ghana. They did the same, deliberate science policy. So other things that we saw is that the attitude issue, some of them have tried to twist what has been seen to be very noble, that can drive us forward, and say you are trying to do away with hearts. How will we learn our history? How will we learn our background? No. Nobody is doing away with hearts. Nobody is doing away with humanities. I can assure you that probably this suggests that in our families, our children could be much, much better than we are in terms of these phones that we have. Some of us have smart, some of us have analogs. Why? Let me tell you, if we delay, the children are going to run very faster than we do, and by the time we realize, we cannot define our science basis. Probably that is what I would say, and I would say thank you.
Yes, Director. Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, the presenters and the participants. Basically, me, generally, what I take here is that summit all is a situation of, I don't know what I should call it, lamentation, or a situation that we seem to be in a very sorry state. Because when you travel in countries like America, where, well, we may not compare ourselves with America, but you know, you have to see where we are going. And I almost said, but when the presenter was presenting, and then they were saying courses which are compulsory, biology, chemistry, and I was in my head saying, but we can also make computer science compulsory. But then I later realized, I think in my office I have about 20 applications of people who have done computer science at the university, and they are there, they cannot find jobs. And yet we want to encourage scientists. But then when the people come out, they cannot find jobs. And actually some of our students have got to run away to go to other countries. Others are discouraged from being innovative because they know that this is not a destination. Because they say, this knowledge is not for Uganda. And yet, we shall get there, I don't know in how many years. But I think the whole issue takes us back to what the Undersecretary is saying. And I'm glad that now we have a ministry. And I think what we need to come, it may be beyond the scope of this study. This study was just a stone's throw into the whole chain of the process. But I think it should also provide the opportunity to the new Ministry of Science and Technology, maybe and the National Council of Science, to sit with the consultant, to see that we map the interventions to the results to the interventions. Because you know, when we have scattered the policies, we have scattered the interventions, then we have, because you can clearly see all the stakeholders that are supposed to contribute to the value chain of promoting science in Uganda. And you see people are struggling, everybody is doing his own. So I think there is a need for a proper process mapping of what results are we expecting at the end of the day, and at what level, maybe with a value chain analysis, what sort of interventions are required where, so that maybe we can also now, based on that value chain, to take it to higher levels of policy decision. Because I think we need to, people who are allocating the money, they need to see the importance of science and what interventions are required at what level. Students who are struggling to, like I was watching the other day on TV, I think at Makerere University, there are students who have innovated a robot. And this robot, there was a student lecturing. Was it last week or this week on TV? And they have created that robot. That robot is supposed to do what? It is supposed to, it is supposed to do what? He was demonstrating and in science there. But what I'm trying to say is, can we come up with serious kind of recommendations to people who are innovative, who can come up with some kind of something like that, so that they are rewarded and they are given some kind of this kind of medals, and then the whole world sees, so that it can encourage people, even the people who pass science at high school. Can we have some kind of prizes given to people for whatever they are doing? And another thing also, I wanted to find out whether your analysis also put into account the private schools. Because the laboratories, it looks like all private schools seems to be doing better than the national schools. So I don't know whether the data captured the private schools. But what I'm trying to say is that how can, given that there has not been any kind of study to say, to show what impact has come from those kind of interventions, how can we build on this study to see that we come up with some kind of a process mapping that would link results, I mean the interventions to results, so that we have a basis of argument, and then when people are reading this report, or maybe when we are publishing or we are doing what, people can clearly see that we are lacking here, we need this kind of skills, and this is how best we can promote them. I seem to see so many scattered efforts without direction, and if we continue moving like that, we might seem to, we may not help the system to promote science. And even still, from this report, I'm not seeing that way forward that is helping the system to know where we need to really serious interventions to help science prosper in Uganda. Maybe when the consultants interact with the ministry, maybe these are some of the things you might have to bring forward. And also the unified center of science interventions. I think the policy should guide what secondary school should do. We should see a policy which is unifying all efforts, so that people who are into BTVET, like he said, there should be a general policy that when the vehicles of government have reached the point of whatever, there is no need to send them. Maybe they just send them to, it is just a standard policy, so that ministries know it. A policy that would encourage people who are into this skilling business, because people are skilled. I mean, here we are looking at secondary school, we are looking at science and formal education. How about in the informal education? So I think we need a policy that is unified, that would really try to map out the interventions that are required, so that those interventions would clearly show how the intervention will link into the results that would need maybe in the future. So that when we are talking about science, we are actually referring to something that can guide us to see this intervention is going to lead to what. So that maybe tomorrow if we come back to do a process, or maybe we are assessing the impact of the interventions, we see where to start from and where to end. I am just thinking aloud. To me, I do not seem to see that this process evaluation, much as it is trying to show us a picture, that we are still lacking in the area of science guidance to get into the world of science we want to be. We still lack a proper guideline document that would help us to map interventions to results. I beg submission.
Thank you very much. Before I take the next lot of questions, just wanted to say that I think there's need for the consultant to have a deliberate time with Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. They have a lot of scientists there. I think they are working on so many documents.
Including reviewing the
UNST policy.
The STI policy, Science, Technology and Innovation policy.
Yes, STI policy. So if you can give them that opportunity to enrich this report, I think it will be very, very important.
Thank you so much, presenter, and all the observers and the discussants here. I'm from the Ministry of Education and from the Secondary Education Department. Mary Ntete is my name. I'm looking at the issue of the stakeholders. When the list of the stakeholders contacted in this study was displayed, I felt like there were two other stakeholders that were missing. One of them is the local government. That one was missing. This is a key stakeholder, the fact that this secondary education is partially decentralized, and a greater part of it in terms of monitoring, in terms of supervision and so on, local governments are very key. And then the other body may be representing the Board of Governors in the secondary schools. Although they don't have an association that you would go to, but having boards of governors would also be helpful, because these are the financial managers in the schools and key decision makers in the implementation of this science policy. Then the issue of labs, it has been mentioned. I'm really wondering where this information came from, because we have maybe we are looking at what government only has done. When we look at like 32 laboratories in the 2016-17, it is not realistic. We have some that were constructed, others were rehabilitated, and each and every city school that is being constructed, there is a lab constructed. The issue of functionality comes later. We should also be in a position to realize that the private secondary schools that are coming up and those already in existence, in order to attract students to those schools, you would bear me evidence. On the TVs, it is the issue of a laboratory in a school that would be key to attracting students in these schools. So if we looked at all the laboratories in the private and the secondary schools, definitely the number would be higher up than what we have there. And when we talk about these laboratories, are we talking about these conventional biology, science, and biology, chemistry, and physics? We also have ICT laboratories. Are they also included in that? Are we aware that almost, in fact, all the students that graduate from A level are all scientists? Because if you have, you did not mention about that, this is the result of the science policy being implemented. It has come up with the policy of having computer studies for all the students at A level, that are not offering science-related subjects. So at secondary level, all the students graduating out to secondary level at A level can be taken to be scientists because they have acquired that skill that would enable them to function globally everywhere. So it is the functional computer science. Maybe my colleague from NCDC can talk more about that. But those graduating out of secondary now at A level are all scientists. Then other issues that could have come up as a result of this science policy is the creation of the gender unit at the Ministry of Education, which encourages and which focuses on the girl-child science education in addition to others, guiding on how the labs should be and how the science, the STEM education could be implemented at a secondary level. Then the issue of guidance and counseling unit at the Ministry of Education and even in other institutions carrying out or having these career days, having career guidance functions in schools and so on is very, very important. Recruitment of science teachers. Much as we are saying we have very few science teachers, we have very many of them. The moment you put up an advert, we receive extremely overwhelming numbers out there. The issue is quality of the teachers that are out there, quality of their papers, whether they are genuine, authentic, or something of that kind, that remains a question. But the applications received are overwhelmingly high. It is the wage provision that limits the recruitment of these teachers, and more so in the rural areas. So the issue now is to have a school-based recruitment approach in order to have all the schools get science teachers in their schools. But again, the quality remains an issue. So if we can strengthen the quality component, then we would be there. The issue of SESAMAT, I have not had anything to do with the SESAMAT fee, the SESAMAT subscription fee that is intended to sustain this program in place, and how well it has been implemented, the defaulters, and as we talk now, many schools, government and private secondary schools, my colleague in UNEP can talk about that, have failed to acquire materials from UNEP due to failure to remit the SESAMAT subscription fees that are collected from the parents. So we need to look at also that one, and the contribution of ICT through UCC in providing the computers to secondary schools. I've not seen any of that, yet very many schools have benefited from these gadgets, that is the software in schools. It is quite important that maybe that one is also mentioned, and the contribution of UCC towards the digital science. And I think I can stop there for the time being.
Okay, before you hand over the microphone, there was somebody who raised an issue of the qualification of the teachers being fake. As the ministry responsible for education that recruits teachers, what do you say about that?
We recruit them, all right, as Ministry of Education. And at the same time, we train these teachers through the training institutions and so on. The integrity, I think, is the issue that has to come in. Integrity, and there is also that intention of teaching the way you were taught. Okay, that one is also there. And then there was a period, I'm yet to get a certain period of time, where institutions like Chambogo, like Makerere, used not to register students for science-related subjects in education. We would have like 5 coming out and so on, but the numbers now are really overwhelmingly high. So there is need to cross-check the quality of these papers with the training institutions. That is a gap that is of concern to all of us. We are really concerned. And the students themselves have evaluated some of these teachers, rejecting them and chasing them out of class. It has happened to some institutions.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. You can hand over the microphone to your neighbor.
But maybe before she comes in, so can we take it as a general recommendation that the science teachers need to be, the qualifications of science teachers need to be verified?
Yes. Information.
Yes.
So we'll come back again. But when we are talking of these being checked, yes, there's the issue of standards and the quality of the teachers. But then there is also the issue of one who has left senior 4 to go to TTC. What we are having is that one is leaving is going for A levels, but is selling or providing this paper to some other person to go to the what? The TTC, who never made it. I can tell you that I lost a brother of mine, but before, as we say in Lusoga, before even his neck could rot to get off the head, somebody was at home saying, telling my father that can you give us those papers? Somebody wants a job. Now, where do we find the disjointed way? While I was in Public Service Commission, you would get people and you subject some of those, you would see that they really have a problem. You subject them to UNEP. But the bill that you have to get from UNEP is quite high to verify. We are talking of UNEP, which is in Ministry of Education. Why should there be a problem in verifying this? This is the same sector. We are serving the same country. But you have to pay exorbitantly for UNEP to verify what? The academic qualifications. Now, this is the information I want to give, that there is another challenge there. These people you are seeing who are poor in quality, a majority of them did not use their results of O level and A level to recruit in what? In the teacher training institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. I'm Joyce Ebao from UNEP, a scientist.
You are sitting next to Ministry of Education and you are charging very exorbitantly for verification of Okay, continue please.
Said I'm Joyce Ebao from UNEP, a scientist too. I'm really happy that we are here to debate on this policy of compulsory sciences. I think this has been long overdue. As the assessment body, we have been seeing what is going on, and in most cases when we get into the field that we are about to get into during the assessment period, that's when you see the reality on the ground, that the students are not being taught the way they are supposed to be taught, especially with reference to sciences. The acquisition of knowledge in science is not really like the arts-oriented. More practical approach is key. Lot of observations need to be done. Experimental processing is required. And all this, if you get at the time of the assessment, you really see that the students have not been taught and they have not acquired the skills. In most cases, the schools do lack the required equipment. Private schools leading. And actually one of the things I wanted to point out here was how much support is government really giving the private schools in relation to the implementation of this policy. If we leave this to the private schools, then I think we are not going to realize this. One thing that I think we need to note is that the private schools are the biggest providers at this level. So the majority of our children are in the hands of the private service providers at the secondary level. So one of my recommendations here is that as we look at enhancement of the teacher's salary, I don't know whether it's generally, government should think of seconding the science teachers in these private schools. Most of them don't have teachers. And the teachers from the government schools are the ones who are going to teach there. So finally, both are suffering because the teacher that government has employed in its school does not concentrate because it's divided, has to get and provide services to all these others. Do not have time to sit down to plan for those experiments, do not have time to look at what the students have done. The only thing is go, read the notes, get out, run to the next destination. So we need to look into the issue of the private schools. Then there was something under the challenges, which I wanted a bit of clarification.
Sorry, are you saying that because the science teachers are expensive, the private schools don't hire them, they depend on the ones who are in the government-aided schools?
They don't have them as permanent teachers in their schools.
Why?
Because they cannot hire them.
Well, they're expensive.
Because they're expensive. Okay. So you're putting that teacher as a permanent teacher on your payroll, it becomes expensive for them. So you rather let this teacher come 1-2 days and you pay per day than paying this teacher full month's salary as a permanent permanent teacher. But also, the teachers are also not there. I don't know. Really, the science teachers are not enough. One thing that is happening is that most of the teachers who are in the field are getting back and taking another line. That's my observation.
What do you mean getting
I
back?
was a teacher, change profession. Those who entered the profession long ago are not there. I was a teacher at Navisonsa Girls School. Chemistry, mathematics teacher. We lost 2 teachers who went and did accounts, CPA and so on, and got out. These were chemistry, mathematics teachers. Now, at the time they're coming out, maybe somebody could not afford to pay for this. So get the teaching job, get your money, pay. Once you have got something, you get out. Now we have a lot into the science field. The time I joined the university, the openings were very few. If you have done PCM, either you are going engineering, or engineering you are going for BSc flat, or you are going for education. That is PCM. Now those who did went for the Bachelor of Science flat, eventually there were no jobs even. You have to go back and do a diploma in education to go and teach. So those were the options. But now there are openings, they can upgrade. There's a lot in the fields of computer. So with your mathematical background, why should you remain there with this low pay and so on when you can get a better opening? And you have the money to pay for yourself to upgrade or get something better and move on. So many are also leaving, getting into other fields. So we need to look into that. How do we retain them, those who are there? Some people are there just as a stepping stone. Once I have established myself, then I get out. So we have to look into that issue. The challenges, there was something about getting into compulsory science at O level before primary. But currently, all the subjects that we have at primary is compulsory, and science is one of them. So I don't know, maybe I need more clarification there. Those challenges and the challenges. Starting compulsory science at O level instead of primary level would be missing the basic foundation. Science is compulsory at primary. So I think maybe we need, my colleague from NCDC will clarify, but to the best of my knowledge, I think science is compulsory at primary level. Teaching of science. My colleague said we're saying from primary, really should start from nursery. We should capture them from there. And at the nursery level, these children are very inquisitive. They really enjoy those experimental approaches. And if you look at the way those teachers teach, they're really real onto the ground. We spoil these children as we go up and make them lose out on those scientific skills. So if we want, I think it's also high time. I'm happy that government is now trying to look down at the foundation. The foundation of education is not at the primary level. It is at the nursery level. That's where the basic skills are actually acquired by the children. So I think we need to recommend that we need to look at what is going on at that level. Thank you very much.
Now, I think let's just jump a bit. You go to that gentleman with the white shirt.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to provide information on the issue of fake papers. I think the ministry has come up with interventions to see how they can remove those people or teachers who claim to be teachers and are not teachers without the required qualifications. The ministry is registering all the teachers. Those without registration numbers, or if you are registered over how many years, the ministry is registering all. If you don't have the papers, I don't think you can be registered. I think like 30,000 teachers have failed to meet the requirements, which I think the Undersecretary was mentioning are part of that group. Then I think even the Education Service Commission has a role to play in addressing the problem of fake papers. Because the ministry is at the receiving end. If the Public Service Education Service Commission has given a minute that so and so be offered appointment, you also appoint based on that. Yes, the Education Service Commission is part of the ministry, but I think the problem starts from somewhere and it ends up with the ministry. Then we have come up with the National Teacher Policy, where all the teachers will be registered under the National Teacher Council. You will be given a number, and you will be required to enroll, to be put on the roll by having the certificate that you are, like LDC, what LDC is doing. You are a practicing teacher, or you are not a registered teacher to be in class. So I think the issue of fake papers, people masquerading as teachers, is very soon being are going to be solved.
Okay, thank you very much. Now come back here. Come back here now.
But I also want to thank the government for rehabilitating universities. AFDB invested in a lot of money, and if you go to some of these universities, you'll see the infrastructure. And then finally, the establishment of Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation. You cannot talk about compulsory science without talking about that ministry. It was always in the armpit of other ministries. We yearned for it, and finally it was created as the youngest ministry. I go to the whole discussion here. Attitude. We must look at the attitude. Other studies that are following up this study must look at the attitude. And, well, the only way you can assess people and you know the uses of assessment is examination. But we are doing too much of examination, and that affects the attitude of our people. You cannot make science compulsory and get results if you don't change the attitude at different levels. We start with our own students. We should have a science week, and I hope the Minister of Science and Technology are taking this. One way of changing attitude is getting involved. I think there is a science week in November. Here, we don't need to invest there, not only in examinations. If you look at it, now everybody is running around doing examinations. We really must have deliberate efforts and studies on the attitude. Then I go to, I should call it the kitchen. When you talk about, because I really want us to talk about the compulsory. Where is it compulsory? At O level. And if it is compulsory at O level, you must start with the teachers. Who are the teacher trainers? Universities and other, and who are the people we recruit? If we don't give you quality teachers, I don't think they will be able to handle our children there, and that affects the teaching of science. So, as much as the National Council for Education is doing some work, but like I actually feel the universities are left to do what they want in terms of what they are teaching, but everybody, like now the President's office has come up, get interested in the studies of seeing what do you teach. And from what you teach, then we go to the quality and how will it be delivered. There must be that relationship. And from what I see, and I've been a teacher for quite some time, the curriculum we are teaching is really detached from, it is still the European curriculum. I don't know how best, you know, we had tried it when we were looking at the lower secondary, but somehow people of our age were saying, don't dilute our science, you know, and we got some problem, but I hope people will understand that we really need somehow to localize what we teach, so that our people can understand the language. So other studies that talk about compulsory science, there is a question of curriculum. We really need to sit down and talk about the curriculum we teach at the university and what we teach in these schools, and what you name is examined. We are putting emphasis on academic. Then return on investment. I really want us to have statistics. You have made science compulsory at O level. How many are transiting A level to do sciences? You'll find most schools have a very big class of arts students. And every time I visit these schools, oh, you know, Chambo, you give us science teachers. I say, how many do you send us? You have a very big class of arts teachers. And this is the return on investment. It's very expensive to have a big science class. Because you need the laboratory, you need all sorts of things. I really want to summarize. Again, you talked about the compulsory science policy. You never talked about the guidelines. Because a policy without guidelines, really, you may not really get to where you are going. I really don't know whether there are guidelines to that policy. So you have a policy and we are really moving around. And I find to ask, every time you make a policy, you must have implementation guidelines. So if you don't have them, I don't know what you are doing. A policy is good to be there, but if you don't have guidelines, then you have a problem. There is something that is never talked about, and it has been general, the gender issues. Let me tell you, these girls don't pass sciences. That's number one. Even if we want to give them 1.5, you don't have any, in science, we are just telling the government, this 1.5 is not helping the girls in science. Because they have already failed. Even if you had done 1.5, they will not make it. So who will apply the wrong scheme? Nobody will apply the wrong scheme. So look at the failure rate of the girls. And then you see the people have been adding 1.5. This 1.5 is not helping the girls. And you really need to look at it, and then it is reflected in their own scheme. I was looking at the statistics, but the point is the performance of girls. And as Michelle Obama said there must be a problem in teaching these girls. There must be a deliberate effort on looking at how we teach so that we can encourage the girls. I'm talking about things generally. I'm almost completing. I evaluated Sesemat in IGAM. And teachers, and I didn't see anywhere where you're talking about class size. Class size affects the teaching of science. And I didn't see it come out. The teachers are saying Sesemat programs are really very good, but how do I conduct a science class of 100 students? I'm just standing in front of class and they are just here. How do I really teach this science? Sesemat programs are really good, but we really also need to talk about the class size. But also, I think as government, we need to look at if we are giving up equipment, why don't we give some, and they are very good, instead of scattering resources? Because we went to schools where, Ministry of Education gave us these boxes, but the equipment is not being used, leave alone being poor. But even the poor equipment that is there can't be used. There was no space. The headmaster locks the box because he doesn't want the things to be stolen, and they're not being used. The students are there being taught without equipment. So I think we really need to know that if I've given you a lab, then I've given you equipment, then I've given you teachers. What is the use of giving you equipment when there's no teacher in the school? I think we really need to, I know there is always scramble and sometimes it's very difficult, but I think we really need to be strong and only use our resources responsibly. I would also make some recommendations. Science, there must be incentives. By the way, it's not about paying the differences in salaries. To me, if there was I know if I do sciences, I'm assured of getting the job. That's one incentive. And it's possible. Then we have a young population, and I see it in universities. There is no deliberate effort, I think, as government to get the brightest and use them. We have these young people thinking they can do wonders in sciences, but there is no deliberate effort, and I think Ministry of Science and Technology, this is where we really need to come up with deliberate policies to make sure that we tap into these young people, so that they don't complete their degrees and be wasted. Even those who have not come for degrees, they need to be tapped into. I think even these technical colleges, they are young brains which are really very good, which can innovate. You can't do Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation, and you don't look for where innovation should be, the innovators where they should be. And I think you should also target those who didn't go very far in school, so that you can get these innovators. Innovators are not these people with PhDs, and no. Let us deliberately look for them. Finally, I think we really need a think tank. We cannot continue doing this research like this and become scattered. We must have thinkers. We must have people who must think for this compulsory science education. Not everybody is an expert. Me, I studied chemistry, I can't talk for biology. But you find everybody masquerading their own as an expert. And this is what we are really lacking. Everybody talks as an authority, but no, it can't work that way. And you never get results. There must be a think tank which must be tasked. We want the results here, and you must come and report to us. Otherwise, I really thank you so much for this, and to be done under the office of the president is challenging this. I should be the one calling you, Chango, will come and talk about comparative science education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me hand over to the next person.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. I'm from Makerere University, and I head the Science Teacher Education program there. Mr. Chairman, I work with Justus in Chambogo. We do the same kind of work, so he has said some of the things, and I will not repeat them. But I've never seen the ministry calling us as scientists or science teacher educators. Where are the chemists, for example, those professional bodies of chemists, or the biologists? Because if we are all doing the same work, we should be doing it jointly together. And what Justus mentioned here is, what science do we teach to our children in Uganda? Using which resources? If we are still teaching science the way we received it from colonialists, I think we are not going to make headway. The tree will still be valued for firewood, and it will be cut. And that's where we are missing the point. The resources we use are not there, and our teachers continue using the abort, they continue using. And by the way, this overemphasis on laboratories, when the science is in nature, in natural laboratories. So there's a problem also with the mode of delivery. How do we deliver the science? Using which concepts? I did not see that in this. In fact, I missed the impact study, because if we had the impacts and outcomes in this study included as well, I think it would be very. Because sincerely speaking, the science and the way it is interpreted by our teachers need a lot to be guided, and we have to. There are concepts like heat where you don't have to really, but you can teach it even without using laboratories or whatever. And then we are all teaching science teachers, Chambogo, Mbarara, and the National Council of Education maybe stops at that level. We have never met to see how we do it. So there's that missing gap also. And all of us, the teachers come to our schools, and each of them has learned his own way of doing things. And we need, and then the way it is assessed, UNEP is here, he will testify that they keep saying biology is the worst done subject, and this is the problem of assessment. I tell you, there's one senior official in this country who was a doctor, but he had failed biology, but he was one of the best physicians around. So, and that's why we have so many of our scientists going into the BTVET or whatever you call it. The way it is assessed also has a lot to do. Because if someone has been learning the stomach from P4, how can he fail it in senior 6? The same stomach is taught there. So you see, assessment would make use of these professional bodies of chemistry and than hand-picking them. And why don't they find jobs? If they have studied it in school, why don't they find jobs? We've just finished a tracer study of our students whom would pass out into the field, and we found that many of them, they stay on the job maximum 5 years. If it is 10 years, that one probably is a bit motivated, but they keep running away. Why? Maybe the way we also teach them, and the vocation to teach has to start from the lower level of the thematic curriculum. What science is in the thematic curriculum? I asked that question also. So I think we need to localize, I'm emphasizing the point, the teaching of science, so that our children become innovative, more innovative than being technicians of what they learn in science. A doctor is a technician of science because he has to prescribe medicine for another person who is selling it. So that's the science we learn. But how do we really make a doctor using our own? I would wish to meet the team who are carrying out this work. If they can add me on the list of people to consult. Because I've had a lot of experience in science education. And we have actually changed the way we train our science teachers. And we do it with the just as here, and you see all those other universities trying to do it. But we have to change the way we do things. Thank you very much. I think this is my point. We would just like to see improvements. And for the science, who is a scientist? And who is a science educator? If the policy is going to really be written, you should help us to come up with a definition, Ugandan definition of who is a scientist, who is a science educator, who is a science teacher educator. These are terminologies.
Okay, now I think let me just say one thing. A scientist, in the definition of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, is somebody who did sciences. And social science is also scientists. We have their officers who are also scientists in the Ministry of Science. So it's not just biology, chemistry, and physics, no. I'm also a scientist, I did statistics. So science is actually anybody who did sciences. So I think I want to agree with the last person who raised the issues of saying they would want to be part of the team to be consulted. If you are willing to be consulted, please, the consultants are here. Get them after this meeting and give them all the information that you have to enrich this report. So that we get a report that is actually very relevant for us all. Now I want to pick the hands of those who want to raise issues. We finish all of them, they respond, and we close the chapter for today.
But I also have questions to respond.
Want to say something, Director, first?
Yeah, I really wanted to say, because from the discussions, the way it is flowing, you know, we should not just rush to finish a report for the sake of finishing the report. And you can see, you need to question yourselves why the Office of the President picked interest into science education and not any other thing. And from what I am reading here, I think there is a need, much as the consultant has got to finish his work, and we cannot tie him to doing the work of government. Because this is something maybe Minister of Education would have done some time back, as the Deputy Head of Public Service was saying, maybe we would now be looking at the impact. And the scope was just to mirror. Do we have processes? Do we have policies? Do we have systems that are leading us to what exactly we want? Do we get the quality of things we want? Why are we producing science students who cannot find jobs? Why are we not having so many people being innovative, I mean, creating things? So, and what I'm gathering here is that there are issues. There are issues to do with the way of how those scientists are trained, even how the trainers were trained, and then which science are we meaning. And so, to me, I think, since the other secretary has requested that the ministry should be consulted, I wanted to extend my request to him and his ministry to create a platform where especially these good resource people from Ministry of Education would join in, and then you meet the consultants, maybe from your boardroom, where the contributions from somebody from Chambogo, the contributions from the other lecturer from Makerere and the Ministry of Education, and actually UNEB, where all these people will come again. And you interface with the consultant, first of all, I would like you to, because this is not an impact evaluation, it's just a process evaluation, but it can create a basis for an impact evaluation study. And let us talk about the idea of a think tank. I think it is very good. Either in the Ministry of Science or in the Ministry of Education. For sciences, for science, because you have a body, like let there be a body for biology, people specializing in biology or computer science, so what? But at least you are the experts, the way you see here. If you start with the consultant, I think you will provide a better way forward and you will better inform this document so that it can provide, because what for us we want, what is it that we can pick for the executives to look at? And so that maybe it can add value to your efforts promoting science education in Uganda. And by looking at what the consultants have done, you can clearly come up with something you think the roadmap, you sort of create some kind of roadmap, you identify what problem is there, and how best can those issues be identified, can they be identified, if they can be identified, what is it that is required as intervention, or what are the causes of that, and then come up with ideal solutions that we can pick, and for us we want to escalate those recommendations to another level. Let us inform HE, the President, that there was this kind of study commissioned by this office, and the findings were this, and the recommendations were this. In the very simple terms, and this is what people are requesting, that maybe would help science education better in Uganda. Because if we add to the book and maybe we criticize, we do what, we may not get exactly what we want. And we wouldn't want it to be a book like any other study that has been taken, whereby we finish, we close the chapter and the book is produced and then we just put it in ourselves. We are looking for new solutions. Which solutions we are interested in carrying forward, especially the key interventions that you practitioners have seen and that are required. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, the chair. Thank you, the presenter. I'm Biavaga from NCDC. In the presentation, you talked about the stakeholders. I think maybe it was an omission or something like that, but I didn't see the universities and other tertiary institutions that especially train our teachers, because that one really affects the quality of the teachers that we shall need for this policy in this secondary. And also I didn't see the world of work or the industrialists, something like that, those practitioners. Those ones can also help in putting the ideas about the compulsory policy. Then going forward, there was an issue which the officer from UNEP raised. The teaching of science is compulsory even at the primary schools. Even the ECD, we have policies about that from curriculum level. But the problem that comes is when we transit from lower primary to what we call the upper primary, around P5 and so forth, where, like many people have said, there is a concentration towards passing the exams and missing on the proper teaching of science. And we have a lot of testing. Yeah, we have, is it beginning of term, then mid-term, then is it topical, then is it what? So many tests. So combining that one with the issue of maybe what the presenter raised about to SESEMA, to UNEP, NCDC, we work together. Yes, there could be issues in the curriculum. The syllabus is a bit big, but we also make it bigger by consuming all the time in testing, like you have said, and this one really cannot help us to move forward. Because our concentration, like you see, when the results are released, we are, even us by the way, parents and guardians, we are asking the schools, how many D1s in the subject ABC did you raise? How many aggregate, is it for, aggregate 4 for P7, 8 in 8 for CFO. So we concentrate on those things and we miss on proper science teaching. Yes, there are so many people who are getting these very good grades, but are they doing us the science that we want in the country, like the lecturers have been saying? I think maybe yes, maybe no. So we need to look at that one very critically. the over-testing that we have really is making us lose on the proper instruction and teaching of science. We don't motivate people to like these subjects by concentrating on one aspect. And finally, there was the issue of consultation in the curriculum. Yes, I agree. We try also to consult as many people as possible, but it is also very tricky because we cannot reach everybody. We try to reach maybe representatives of organizations, but as an institution, it is really very difficult to have everybody's idea fixed in the curriculum. Because at the end of the day, like my lecturer here, Dr. Justa said, we have somebody saying this, then another one will say that don't do this. So it becomes a very complicated balance. But we need to try to see how to localize our curriculum so that people learn how to utilize our resources as scientists in the innovations that we would want as a community.
Yes, the next person.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name is Vincent Sozi. I'm Assistant Commissioner, Statistics, Monitoring and Evaluation in the Ministry of Education. I just have a few issues to raise. First of all, I thank the team for the study. It is an eye-opener. But I would like to say that perhaps we need some more consultation within the education sector. And I suggest we invite you in our M&E working group. Just a slot, and then you present, you get more views to enrich the report. And I know there are some studies that have already been done, usually not directly in the issue of science as a policy, but if you look at NAPE has looked at, has done some studies, okay, S2, to see their competencies, biology, biology, mathematics, chemistry. Then there's an assessment done on SESAMAT, and I can say that there is evidence that science actually influences the performance index of learners at lower secondary education. So, and also we know that we have so many private providers, okay, of secondary education, lower secondary education. And you will be surprised, most of these private providers are not investing in science-based subjects, and the performance is bad there. And there are so many other interventions, a shift now from PPPs, government is pulling out, okay? Of course that will have its own implication. But basically what I'm saying is that we need more interaction with you so that you get more insight into this area. Then the issue of TVET, we have a TVET policy, okay? TVET is missing in this. Government is creating centers of excellences so that we have competence-based training where we have ready people to be employed. We have councils that are being created, the skills councils from industrialists, from manufacturers, agriculturalists. So these are, I think, areas that need to be looked at to enrich our report. But again, I think we need to interact more with the new Ministry of Science and Innovations so that we have a very clear framework, okay? What is it that you want to achieve as a Ministry for Science and Innovations, okay? We have innovations in ICT. We have innovations in universities. Yeah? You remember yesterday the President was talking about, I think, opening some workshop, some show for scientists. Some young innovator, I think he came up with a vaccine for ticks, which is a good innovation. There are so many innovations. What should be the direction, okay, in that area? So I think the think tank will be very useful. But for what I can say for now, I think it's it's agreeable, we can give the consultant a slot in our M&E working group where we have stakeholders within the education sector normally sit, and then you present your report, and then we can see how to enrich it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many hands are up now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Madam, you've given up? Pardon? They've said it. Okay, those 4, and we conclude the chapter.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also like to thank the presenters and the consultants. My name is Paul Chalimba, consultant in education, especially in Tibet. And mine is brief. From all our discussions, Chair, you appreciate that there is a gap in terms of defining our priorities in terms of science, so that we can guide our the investment in terms of resources. Let's look at this. Have we prioritized the particular gaps in terms of development priorities as a government that require graduates or products or human resource for specific science areas, so that when we get graduate scientists, they don't flow to the market? Have we said that we need chemists, and how many do we need? And have we planned in terms of the investment from the training up to where they will be employed, where they will work? If we are saying we need petroleum experts, we are going to do exploration in the next number of years, are we doing the right investments, and are we following up these graduates to provide them the support, so that after the graduation, we are motivated, we know we can employ them as a country, so they can contribute to national development. The other scheme we are talking about, the people we are supporting, the students in the universities, what's our plan to make sure that these people are utilized? Even in science, we are saying we're supporting in science. At the end of the day, we don't want to see where we have provided a lot of funds as a government, and yet the graduates, after they're out, they can't go anywhere. They are more than what we need. Or they're actually graduating or skilled in the areas where government does not have priorities in terms of employing them or engaging them, provide the labor force. So that's the first thing we need to come up when we are talking about science and innovation, or when we are talking about the policy of science. So as priority, can you tell me where I should put my efforts, even in private, as a private sponsor, my kid or my child, what do I pay? I want to pay when this value, where you know that after this, then the candidate or graduate will be able to be employed. The other aspect which you have missed out, that links up with that, is the quality aspect. Have you found out, or can you do some relationship between what we are having in terms of performance of this policy in relation to other policies, for example, the UPE policy? In terms of practice, in UPE, there is this situation where all pupils graduate, where they are not, there's nothing like, they have to repeat the classes. Now, if they have to continue from one, and you remember we are going to USE, secondary education, and they have to go through the process just. Do you think, in terms of concentration, the quality, we are going to have the quality learners who are passing science? If you go and test, if you look at the results, in terms of such results from the Ministry of Education by different researchers, they will tell you that science subjects are worse performed because of the input, in terms of the resources for teaching, the quality of the teachers, the facilities we give, but also the graduates who come out from right from primary level. Now, when you are talking about TVET, what we call the technical institutions, is mostly technical, science is a core. If you are talking about mechanical engineering, if you are talking about building and construction, if you are talking about agriculture, that is core, that is science. Now, if you look at the graduates who go divert those institutions, they have done very poorly in mathematics. From primary, they have 9.
When it comes to senior 4, the same situation. How do you say you are going to have a quality engineer? And remember, these are the technicians who are supposed to do the hands-on, while the graduate at university level is a supervisor, engineer. What's the quality that we need? Then lastly, the solution is coordination of our work, whatever we do. That's why we hear science and technology are asking about the same question. Ministry of Education is asking the same question. Education Service Commission, which is a blame, big blame, but you are saying we can have a system where I log in. If we say I studied Bachelor of Statistics at Makerere University, I log in the system. I should be able to see actually graduated on this date, whatever. That is simple. That's basically for platforms will be provided by the Ministry of Science and Technology, that database. So I don't need to run around and pay a lot of money to know where, if you went to school in Uganda or not. That should be easily accessible to me. So let's do the coordination, we shall improve the efficiency. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, behind there now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the Office of the President for bringing us together to discuss this subject. And I want to agree with whoever has talked about localizing our content, contextualizing science. What science are we talking about? Uganda is an agricultural country. Our problem, we have run away from agriculture. And all the science, most of the science can be found within the agriculture field. But when you look at the policies, the support for agriculture education in our country has diminished, has gone astray. Most of the people discussing educational policies for us are leaders in educational schools. They have started their own schools, so they think agriculture is expensive, so they put agriculture away. But agriculture is the solution. When we go to the primary science, and I want to thank the person who has mentioned, entry to secondary level, what is the grade of science that we are taking in, and mathematics. I'm holding the primary science curriculum here. I have extracted topics of agriculture from P4. But even going back to primary 1, it's about my home. What are the activities in my home? The agriculture activities. Who is talking about them in school? And all the children going to these primary schools are going back home without any connection. They leave school, they cannot tell why they are learning about spacing and rows, yet that is what they are using in their homes to plant. So it is about going back to look at the basics. The curriculum in the primary school is very rich, the science curriculum, but we are not teaching the curriculum. And UNEP is not helping us either. When I look at P7 curriculum, it says at the very end, describing one of the competencies, describing how to start and manage a school or home woodlot project. And we are talking about agroforestry, we are talking about climate change, and UNEP may not pay attention to such a topic, and yet these schools are supposed to teach it. We should be seeing woodlots in schools. You look at all the schools in Kampala here, what are they for? Why do we have such schools? Now, when you move to the loan scheme, I observed the loan scheme analysis that has shown less girls being successful. But go back to the NAPE report of 2018, UNEP produced. Proficiency of learners in numerals at P3, the girls were more proficient than the boys at 56%. At P3, the boys were at 54.3. But by P6, the girls were at 45.9 and the boys had taken over 56.2. Why? Because the way we deliver the curriculum is not supporting the girls, and yet if we look back at the context of the home, agriculture and all the activities that come in the home, the girls would be even far better than the boys. So we are missing a point in our curriculum if we don't localize, if we don't contextualize, if we say agriculture at secondary level is going to be optional because of cost, and we are putting it away from the syllabus, we are leaving it as
by the way, whoever wants it selects it, so whichever school wants it can put it. Government must take back its priorities. Education is a priority for government. We must be able as government to put subjects like agriculture in schools and support them and have the science localized, contextualized, so that we all understand it, so that the children leave school and go home and support the homesteads. I'll give one example. Yesterday, I had an activity that was shared going on in one of the primary schools, and they were tying a rope, and they were tying knots at 30 centimeters. This rope is supposed to be used in planting maize in the gardens. That is the recommended scientific way. When you plant in a straight line at particular intervals, the yield enhances, and there are reasons behind that. The mathematics teacher is teaching measuring and is not paying attention to such an activity, and all the ropes designed in a school can end up in the community, and we will have organized agriculture because of the science that has been taught in school. So my plea is that we look back at our science and discuss the issue somebody mentioned, whose science, for what reason, is it for Uganda or is it for Britain? I thank you.
Thank you very much. Consultant, I want to begin by thanking you for the job well done here. I want to begin from the foundation. And the foundation of our education is pre-primary education. This is where I feel science should begin from. But when you look at the policy for pre-primary, this foundation has been left in the hands of the private sector. And I would wish to tell you that the private sector is not doing a good job in building the foundation for this country. First of all, when you go to majority of pre-primary schools in Uganda, you find that the category of teachers who are teaching in these pre-primary schools are not qualified teachers. They are actually mainly school dropouts. And how sure are we that they're doing a good job in building the foundation for this country? Secondly, in my own understanding, I think the world of science is a very dynamic world. Technology is revolving, it's moving so fast, and that would necessitate our teachers to also catch up with the changes that are taking place in the world, in the scientific world. And if our teachers are not updated, if there's no continuous professional development, then how sure are we that these teachers and lecturers can produce very good scientists? We need to think along that line. Also, along that, just within the same point, I would say some of the teacher training institutions in this country does not surely deserve to train teachers. More especially our private universities and also other private institutions. I wouldn't complain so much about government teacher training institutions. If you go to some of these private universities and you see the kind of teaching that goes on there, you would really sympathize with the quality of graduates that we are receiving in our market, more especially in the field of sciences. The whole thing starts right from admission. If you admit someone with 5 points, much as he or she has 2 principal paths, 5 points, can this person be trained as a teacher of sciences? This is something very hard to believe. We need to check our system along that line. Then finally, I want to talk about corruption. Corruption that prevails along education line, I mean within the education sector. Recently, I had some interaction with a few teachers who actually told us that what we call capitation grant to secondary education is just in what? normally when this grant is released to the secondary schools, sometimes head teachers are expected to do some kickback back to where it came from, if they have to protect their jobs. So how do we expect, in such a situation, how do we expect the laboratories to be equipped, the library to be equipped, when the grant that is supposed to run the institution is kicked back to where it came from? I'm sorry, recommendation. My recommendation is that, well, we need to strengthen the foundation. We need to alter these policies where pre-primary is left in the hands of the private sector, yet the private sector does not have the capacity to build this foundation. Secondly, we need to regulate the quality of teachers. Currently, teaching is becoming some kind of...
I think the issue now you're raising was already raised.
Okay. So I just want to stop there now. Thank you
very much. Lastly, we're coming to him here. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I just want to mention what my brother is saying, but just take a case in point. We went to Kayonga and found the entire nursery class asleep at around 11. Until we got to, of course, ask here and there what the challenge was. But we came to appreciate that the teacher had put Varium 5 in the tea for the kids. So, I mean, they slept, and that's why the kids slept. They came early and now they're resting. But that's the extent, or that's the gravity with which we need to look at the pre-primary kind of education in terms of regulation and licensing. That was very critical. But the other point is that in terms of science innovations, and I have personally encountered with a number of graduates in the field, once these students from universities have graduated, I don't know what strategy, what sustainability plan that the Ministry of Science has in place. A case in point is one of Africa's best innovators for this year or last year. I think they were Ugandans. They have a company called MScan. Whereas they won an award in Accra, they are supposed to be in Washington this month, on 30th. And whereas they have sponsorships, they need recommendations from their governments. And I fully understand that Foreign Affairs has refused, or has not cooperated, or has not willingly given them such letters of support. I don't know how basically the ministry is planning or has been, helping out.
Contact the ministry?
Yes, the ministry. And then how they can actually be helped.
I think that is noted. You make a comment about that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your participation. I want to say it has been very, very much participatory, and we made sure we got everybody who wanted to say something, because this is where our interest has been. We wanted to make sure that we hear your views, and the consultants take them. Some of them have been noted, others we are going to have a response from them. So I'm giving 2 minutes for the other Secretary Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation to respond to the issues that are very pertinent, and then we shall come back to the consultants for another 2 minutes, and the Director will wrap up this session. Thank you very much. Under Secretary.
Thank you very much, Chair and colleague, and all of you for this wonderful introduction. I'll start with the last one, the issue of support letters. This we do very well. We actually write these letters and they are respected. The latest we wrote for is Bakaira Auto Garage. They wanted to go to South Africa for an exhibition. We wrote them a letter and they were given visas. And remember, these are even informal. The Kaira himself doesn't speak English that is intelligible. So, but we did a letter, he has his interpreter, we gave them a letter, and this answers the question of one of the lecturers here, who was asked that we should not stop just at the formal. We are also handling the informal. Actually, the President has asked us to establish an indigenous knowledge institute, we are handling under the National Research and Innovation Program framework, which is supposed to provide a tool, a funding tool for supporting innovators. We have provisions for everybody. That actually many of the innovators you have out there, they could be more than those we have in universities. The universities, the biggest problem they do have is for them to write and publish. And once they publish, they cannot commercialize their ideas because they can't patent them, so nobody can put money in them. They are now in the public domain. A few other things, looking out for innovators, we are profiling these innovators. But I can tell you, like any other institution, we suffer these same problems. We are looking for wherever they are. We are working with the television stations, which every day you see an innovator being profiled on either Workaday, NTV, or any other one. We are looking for all these. And we think that these are the ones we shall use to defend our request for funding to support these people in cabinet, in parliament. Our National Research and Innovation Framework has asked for 500 billion as promised by the president over the next 5 years. Unfortunately, this year, they gave us only 10. The other financial year, they had given 35, they released the 30, and the president had guided that we should support those that were due for commercialization. Last year, they didn't give us. They said, please come up with a law. We started on a law. Finance said there is no certificate of financial implication. Make it a program. We have written in the program. Parliament is saying, no, we still want the law. So we are still, as I said, working in this. But for us, it's work in progress, and we know we shall get there. You talked of Science Week. Yes, we are joining, and we want to make it even bigger. Right this year, we are partnering with the Kampala Innovation Week. They are those celebrating Innovation Week. We are partnering with them. It will be at Kololo for a whole, I think, 3 or 5 days to work with them. We are also coming up next financial year with what we are calling the Science Festival. And we are going to work with all these, the students, the teachers, all of those involved. We've got actually a department on science, technology, and innovation outreach. This department is supposed to work a lot with you. Unfortunately, again, when we want these things of sensitization, our government, the way we behave, as I said, we do things in a blanket manner. You say, cut money on consumptive. But if I'm going to engage people in consultation, in sensitization, in awareness, how am I going to do it without a workshop? I'm going to do it without going to them. But when it comes to cutting these monies, that is what happens. I want you to lament, but I can assure you that we shall get there. About the ministry inviting, that I've never invited the science educators, I can promise you that we are inviting section by section. Actually, at that level of universities, we initially started by dealing with the Vice Chancellor's Forum. But we later got information that this, Uganda is very funny. People said, but these are very old men, they are no longer effective and what? But I say, for now, these are the ones available to the modality available. But we are reviewing the National Science and Technology and Innovation Policy, and we are being supported by UNCTAD in kind, not cash. But we shall endeavor to always go down and invite you to attend. I think there is one coming very soon. But I have seen something here, Chair, sorry for keeping long on the floor. I have seen the area of interest. I think we shall need, even without looking at this and the consultants, that one is agreed, Mr. Director, as you mentioned. For us, we have no problem. We shall agree with the consultant and invite those colleagues who are one. We may actually want to ask for a bigger platform like this, room, accommodation like this to hold that. But what is happening is that I have seen that the Department of Outreach needs, in the ministry where I come from, needs to deliberately invite these science educators so that we see how best we can push out science there. One thing I didn't tell you, and I'm glad somebody talked about attitude, but now even of teachers, I remember very well. And the problem I think comes from, I think the teachers we started with deliberately chose to be teachers. The nurses we had before deliberately chose to be what? To be nurses. Today, when I fail to go to the next level, I branch into this. And my attitude is totally different. I do not focus on the real things. But let me tell you what happened. When I was in my O-levels, and remember I was in the, not remember, you don't know, I was in the seminary, but we were also doing other work, other education in other work, in the secular education. But I remember this teacher very well. Unfortunately, he died before I got the opportunity to go back to him. He was a mathematics teacher. In senior 2, the man would come and would say, you see, maths is not for everybody. There are those of you who do very well in political education, in CRE, in English, you will always get your marks there. So feel free to get out. And because the things he had studied, the cosines and sines and logarithms, I would quickly pick my books, go and do my history and what, and leave the class. This is the attitude of the teacher. Teaching mathematics is telling me it's not for everybody. And he's allowing me to get out. And senior 12, do you expect to rebellious a bit and what? So you also walk out. But of course I was lucky that I would always compensate and beat them. But when it came to senior 4, second term, they told me you will not get a first grade unless you pass these mathematics. So I went back now and I passed at least with a grade 5. Imagine if this man had the right attitude and had kept me in class, wouldn't I have converted the grade 5 into a distinction? This is the attitude we are talking about. The other thing I would like also to address is finally, Chair. There is something pertinent. We are a young ministries, Chair, so we at times have to explain these things. Sorry, we are the youngest. Somebody asked about the fields of science. According to the National Science and Technology Act, which established the National Council of Science and Technology, the fields of science and technology are agriculture and allied sciences, computer science, electronics and informatics, energy, industrial science and engineering, that is engineering and technology, medical science, which has human and veterinary medicine, natural science, bio and geosciences, physical science, social sciences and humanities. That is what is in the law as we describe what science is one in Uganda. So finally, Mr. Chair, there was that issue of manpower planning, who are the required scientists we need in Uganda and prioritizing. Very good question. Every time we advertise, people come up and apply and they say, re-advertise it. People have not applied. As a country, we have not deliberately worked on manpower planning. What kind of manpower do we need in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 15? China, for example, has done that. It knows the kind of people they will need in 50 years from now. No wonder they are closing 600 universities to turn them back into vocational institutions. Thank you very much.
There are some few things that we've taken note. One of them, members seem to be so much concerned about quality. Just like they always say, the end always justifies the means. So if our interest is in seeing quality products, then we need to think backwards to see what kind of processes do we need to go through in order to have this quality product that we are interested in. Still related to this, we are all aware that one of the key ingredients that determine quality are basically the inputs. Let us try to look at the inputs for the policy. What quality they have. Of course, you also realize that the quality of these inputs is also dependent on the price. What price are we paying for these inputs? So that at the end of the day we have these quality products. The other issue which is also coming out strongly is the issue of the stakeholder. One of the things that we've identified is that the level of engagement within this policy, the implementation of this policy was somehow weak or limited. So one of the things which we need to think about is how do we do the right stakeholder mapping, right stakeholder analysis, so that we bring each and every person who has a role to play in this on board to ensure that the policy is effectively implemented. How are we going to realize this critical mass of scientists without having brought on board the different players on board? So with those few remarks, good enough, US has talked about the issue of attitude. And again, this relates to my colleague behind who talked about agreed. What is our attitude towards agreed? When we are still at school, you remember that each time you could commit an offense, the penalty, the punishment for that would be to go and dig. So if we do still have that mentality that agreed is a punishment, then we still have serious problems which we need to address. With those few remarks, Mr. Chairman, Director, and my colleague, I would like to ask him to say something, and then we finally.
Thank you so much, the audience, for your contribution. I'd like to say something very brief. One is the delivery modules of the content that we give to the students. It all starts from how should we deliver or what should we deliver. The highest contention we found was that SESMAT had a model of delivery. Their emphasis is on the fundamentals of science. And that must be got right. And then when you go to National Curriculum Development Center, they now design curriculum that covers the whole year or the whole section that should be served. Then UNEB comes in and sets exams based on National Curriculum Development Center setup. Now the school management are torn apart. Should we follow SESMAT? Should we follow National Curriculum Development Center? Should we follow UNEB? So that is the dilemma that we found in the field. And we now need an harmonized position in that respect. But the delivery aspect has so many angles. That is one of the angles that I want to bring out. And then the second issue that I wanted to talk about is the issue of the impact. I think you saw, we said we have conceptualized this assessment in terms of the DART criteria, one of which is the impact. But at this moment, you are not going to say this now an impact, we say an emerging issues. So the emerging issues that we have found in science is that it goes back to curriculum development. That now we have what we call environmental management science. How are we prepared to do that? The world is moving. Where are we? So those are some of the things that must come through coordinated approach, which we need to do, such that science policy is actually, the result is realized. Then another thing is about coordination. I don't want to talk much. I think people have talked much about it, but the gap is wide. Another thing is about quality. One thing I want to find out, basically, I wanted to get exactly what is the question that we should ask as a nation. Is it where are we going? Who are we? What are we doing? Or what it is? Probably, Chairman, that is the question which I feel, and I probably request each one of us as we go back. What is the right question that we should ask? Because we have asked so many questions several times, and it is seen leading us to no direction, or is in a cycle. You just start from one and come back to the same position. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Can we give a round of applause for the presenters? Now, before I call upon the director to say the final words and wrap up, I just want to say that this has been a very interactive meeting. I am very, very sure we have got what we wanted, and we are going to have, Ministry of Science has already promised that they are going to have another invitation for the consultants to come and talk to them. And if you want to bring them here, tell us and we shall be able to avail for you this venue. And you get as many people as you want and come and meet them. With those few remarks, I thank you very much, and now hand over to the director to make a way forward and wrap up the meeting and finally close this workshop. You're most welcome, Director.
Thank you. I think we also need to clap for the chair. Yes, really, so some few web announcements to just make sure that you have registered your names and left your telephone number. We shall have a modest, how can I call it? You know government, how we operate. A modest token of your participation, but it will come when it's ready. Somebody should reach out to you. And that's the gentleman seated there, Peter Brani. These people should leave their telephones behind and make sure that
maybe numbers.
the telephone numbers or the account numbers? The what?
The telephone numbers, not telephone.
Oh, the telephone numbers. You should leave your telephone numbers with him at the right time, but you'll be patient because you know how government operates. But at the right time, we shall really provide something to compensate your transport. We shall also have lunch immediately we get out of here. To the consultants, thank you for the good work, but unfortunately we cannot say that you have concluded your report. So your report seems not to have clearly passed the test of validation, since there are so many issues still outstanding. So I think we have already requested the other Secretary, Minister of Science and Technology, to convene another meeting which we shall give strictly 1 month. Strictly 1 month. The other Secretary, please reconvene another meeting with all key stakeholders in this process. With I think the topical issue is what type of comparative science are we talking about? And we need, because when you hear my colleague from the delivery unit emphasizing the issue, the focus to agriculture, then you hear others talk about going informal. So there are so many issues that need to be addressed. So there are still issues of help us to effectively coordinate the stakeholders and enable them to focus. Then issues of attitude, issues of formal versus informal skill requirements, projections for stakeholders, planning, because we seem to be are we training more than we need? So issues of planning for the skills we need, also they need to be, and the issue of curriculum. So to me, I think let us subject the study and the recommendations and our discussions to another gathering that is going to be convened by the Ministry of Science and Innovations, so that we can have another deeper thinking to this document, so that at the end of the day, we come out, because when you listen to somebody from UNEP, she had the serious concerns. When you listen to somebody from Chambogo, serious concerns, somebody from the River Unit, serious concerns, somebody from Ministry of Education, so let us again reconvene with focused discussions on the process that we want to inform on what comparative science are we talking about and how should we move it forward, so that the report comes out with clear action-focused recommendations that we need to escalate to another level. So with these few, and this should be done within 1 month. So I don't know whether you will need a letter from us to that effect, or we take it that it is noted and we wait for invitations. As the chair noted, okay, the modalities. So members, I think what you are going with is that the report is stayed for another deeper discussion, so that we can give it more value that we should carry forward, maybe to the decision table. I think this is the general consensus. Are we being unfair to the consultant? Yeah, but I think let us get something that is valuable, something that will lead to really very good, practical, focused recommendations. With these few words, I really thank you for your patience. I thank you for your participation. I'd like to declare this meeting closed, and we will come here for lunch. I thank you.
Yes. Oh, so.